Hi there, my name is Kelly Goff. I'm a columnist for the Daily Beast, and I'm here on day 2 of the Women in the World Summit 2014 here in the Toyota Solutions studio, and I am joined by Cecile Richards, who is the president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. So you just finished up a panel on your mother, the legendary governor of Texas, Ann Richards.
Yes.
I have never said this on camera before, but I have told you this privately, which is that I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was a little girl growing up in Texas. And the reason I met her is because my parents felt very strongly that as a little girl I should have the opportunity to see female role models as leaders firsthand.
That's great.
I know that if I ask you, you will not answer whether or not you think Hillary Clinton is going to be elected president or running for president, so I'm not going to ask that. But I will ask you, how important do you think it is for girls to see women in leadership roles like your mother, like Hillary Clinton?
Oh, it's absolutely essential, and it's too bad that we haven't had more in Texas since Mom was governor. But it's very exciting now, of course, to see so many women in Texas running for statewide office. I think, look, government works better when everyone's represented, and certainly having women, whether I was talking earlier about being on the Supreme Court, having women in Congress, having women in the Senate, makes an enormous difference because, frankly, they talk about some issues that otherwise get left on the table.
So Speaker Pelosi has told this very famous story about being a woman in her early days in Congress and how male members of Congress at dinners would very rarely, I can't tell it with the same humor she did, but would very rarely let her and other women get a word in edgewise. And that one time they finally talked about childbirth, and even then they monopolized the conversation, which is hard to picture, but somehow they managed to do it.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about particularly the issues that Planned Parenthood works on? How does it make a difference having women at the table?
Well, absolutely. I was just saying that I had the pleasure of being in the Supreme Court last week for a very important case about women's access to birth control, which is a topic that you might even ask why we're debating this, but there's a big case before the court. And to sit in the courtroom and have 3 women on the Supreme Court was night and day from the last time I visited. And this was to have Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, asking questions about how would the outcome of this case impact the women involved, because it was all about birth control. And I can tell you, they were the only ones dominating the conversation about the impact on women. These conversations simply wouldn't have happened before. It was very, very striking. Would help if we had 2 more women on the court.
So what do you think are the most important issues facing women globally? If you actually had to pick one, because I know that Planned Parenthood works on issues globally. So what do you think is the biggest issue?
I mean, look, the single biggest issue impacting women is their ability to access health care, certainly, and that's related to everything. That's an economic issue. It allows them to finish their education. 30% of women, young women who drop out of high school in the U.S. do because of a pregnancy. So there's so much we can do to help women. Again, the theme of this conference has been help young women finish their education, be able to be part of the workforce. That starts with making sure that they have access to health care.
So when you wake up every morning, Cecile, you have so many battles that Planned Parenthood seems like they're fighting in various states and on various issues. But when you wake up every morning, what is it that you see as your mantra as the leader of Planned Parenthood? What is your goal for every day when the work that you do? Sure,
no, it's a great question. And the goal is to make sure that women in the U.S. in particular, but we also work in, as you said, in Africa and Latin America, is that women have access to health care that they can both afford and that's accessible. I'm very excited. We did an enormous amount of work as Planned Parenthood to educate women about their rights under the Affordable Care Act. And now we know more than 7 million folks have signed up. And we now have 27 million women in this country who have access to birth control in their insurance plans at no cost. To me, what that means is women are going to be able to prevent unintended pregnancy, have their family when they're ready, finish their education, and support the kids that they have. It's very exciting.
So Planned Parenthood's coming up on its 100th anniversary, which is
very good. That's
right.
Hard
to believe. And so, what do you see as for the next 100 years? What do you picture being the defining issues of reproductive rights? Because it seems like in some ways they've changed since it began, but in some ways they haven't, because we're still discussing something like birth control.
Sure. Well, look, I do think for my daughters and my son, these are issues that they sort of think of are a given. That of course there's access to birth control. Of course that reproductive health care, including abortion, is legal. So I actually think what I think is going to be the important part of this next century is access. Is saying that actually what we really believe in is reproductive justice, and that is that it's not just a right, but it is actually accessible to all women, regardless of their zip code, regardless of where they live. We've got a lot of work to do to make that happen. especially in places like my home state of Texas or our home state of Texas. But to me, that's really the important work of this century.
And your thoughts on Wendy Davis? Because I can't discuss Texas politics without mentioning her.
Look, incredible, fantastic candidate, fantastic office holder. But I think what Wendy's candidacy and what's happening in Texas represents is a whole generation of young people getting involved in the political process. I spent a lot of time in Texas this last summer at the legislature, along with thousands of young people who came there day after day to testify in opposition to the legislature. And I feel like they have sort of lit a fuse down there, and it's not going out. And I wish Wendy all the very best. She's an extraordinary office holder.
And the last question, what does it mean to have women coming together from around the world to discuss these issues and here at the Women in the World Summit? Why do you think it matters for women here in America to connect with women in other countries on issues that affect women and girls?
I think that's a great question, because to me it's almost the same reason it was important to be in Texas, is that women down there can feel like they're alone, that they're on their own. Although the beauty of social media is now you never really are alone. I think what I have picked up at this conference is how reaffirming it is for women, whether you're in Rwanda, whether you're in Syria, whether you're in Waco, Texas, to know that there is a whole community of women and men around the globe who are supporting you in your fight for rights. It's inspiring. We need to do this every year, and thank goodness Tina does.
Okay, thanks so much, Cecile.
Absolutely.
Thanks again to Cecile Richards here in the Toyota Solutions studio at the Women in the World Summit 2014. My name is Kelly Goff, and thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks.